Okay, Jeremy, you're good to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Nancy. Before we start the meeting, I would like to read a land acknowledgement. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the neutral people, also called Adawandarun, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee, people who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. I will remind the committee and members of the public that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel. Anyone who registered to participate in this meeting will be invited to speak in the order of the applications being heard. I will now do a roll call of the committee for the benefit of the public watching this meeting. When I call your name, please wave at your camera and say here or present. I, Jeremy Karn, am present and chairing this meeting. Starting with the committee members, Linda Dixon.
Present.
Chris Fletcher. Stephen Hartman.
Present.
Charles Ziedler.
Here.
And staff, David Gundrum, planner.
Present.
And Nancy Thompson, secretary treasurer.
Present.
I will now provide an explanation of the procedures for this meeting. Each application will be read by Nancy, and she will ask each applicant to make a brief presentation not to exceed 5 minutes. The committee will be given an opportunity to question the applicant. Any other person who has registered with the recording secretary and is wishing to address an application either for or against will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please make sure you have turned on your microphone and video and identify yourself clearly for the recording secretary. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the committee will make a decision on the application. Once discussion on your application is complete, please mute your microphone and turn off the video. You are free to leave the meeting at this time or remain and listen to the balance of the applications. The applicants are advised that each application has a 20-day appeal period as required under the Planning Act. In accordance with Bill 23, which received royal assent on November 28, 2022, appeals may only be submitted by the applicant, the municipality, certain public bodies, and the minister. The last day of appeal for the applications heard today is August 1st, 2023. At this time, I'll ask if any members of the committee, if they are declaring a pecuniary conflict of interest with any of the applications. Seeing none, Nancy, could you please read the first application?
Thanks, Jeremy. The first application this evening is for minor variance application A2023 for Gary and Diana Campbell for the property at 40 Isley Drive in Maryhill. The property is zoned settlement residential and contains a single detached dwelling and an accessory shed. The applicant is proposing to construct a new detached accessory dwelling unit as a separate accessory building and is requesting relief from the following. Accessory buildings, section 6.4.4, to increase the maximum lot coverage for all accessory buildings from 100 square meters to approximately 146.5 square meters, which will consist of a new accessory dwelling with an approximate 94.7 square meter main floor, 10.2 square meter covered porch, 1.1 square meter chimney, and an approximate 40.5 square meter attached garage. The existing 8.8 square meter garden shed will be removed from the property. So Gary, the owner, is here, as well as his daughter Samantha and son-in-law Mark, to speak to the application.
Thank you, Nancy. I guess, would you mind just making a quick sort of presentation of the application?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Samantha Davis. I'm the daughter of Gary and Diana Campbell, the current owners of 40 Isley Drive in Maryhill, the property in question. I grew up in Maryhill on this property since I was 1 year old. I've stayed local and currently live in Kitchener with my husband, Mark, and our young daughter, Harper. My parents are getting older and have some health and accessibility issues. They live with my brother, Spencer, who has autism. For years, I've driven to and from Maryhill at least twice per week to help them with their personal health and to help maintain their home. My husband and I decided that it would be easier on all of us to live in Maryhill with my parents so that they can continue to live in the community they love while being taken care of as they reach old age. Early last year, 2022, we consulted with Guelph architect Bill Spira to design a coach house or garden suite for my parents' property. The plan was to have my parents and brother move into the smaller home, and Mark and I would take over the main dwelling. Bill followed the bylaw as he understood it, presented on the Township of Woolwich website, and spoke with planner David Gundrum at least once. After we submitted for permit in May of this year, 2023, we were told that we exceeded the limits of the bylaw for an accessory building. The Township's position is that accessory dwelling units are, in fact, accessory buildings and need to meet the requirements of an accessory building, even though the definitions of the two conflict with one another. Mr. Gundrum recommended we modify our plans and then apply for a minor variance, which is what brings us here today. I'm here to request consent to exceed these limits because to place 3 adults who have various accessibility requirements in a separate dwelling of only 100 square meters, including garage and storage space, is extremely limiting. Before submitting the minor variance application, Mr. Gundrum recommended that we propose to get rid of the existing garden shed and reduce the garage size of the accessory building. We did this. We are currently trying to sell the shed and we reduced the proposed garage size by 4 feet. We were unable to reduce it any further as the plans show that there are stairs to the basement of the coach house for access to utilities, which would be hindered if we reduce the width of the garage any further. These were the concessions we made for our application to more closely meet the requirements of the bylaw to help us get this minor variance approved. The circulation package went out to the neighbors and we waited 2 months for this meeting to happen. We then received the recommendation from the planning committee on Thursday of last week that we install an open air carport instead of an enclosed garage. This recommendation seems late and a bit odd to us. A carport would reduce the amount of secure storage space to less than we currently have, given that we are getting rid of the existing locked garden shed. A carport would also require my senior parents to have to go outside in open air to access the basement. They may even have to shovel snow. Further, I'm confident that none of our neighbors actually want to look at a carport. An enclosed garage, we argue, helps improve the visual impact of the property. Meanwhile, the planning committee argues that a carport would soften the visual impact of the second dwelling. But we wonder what's better, a softened visual impact of a building mass or an improved visual impact of an enclosed garage. It seems a matter of subjectivity. We have made sure to design this dwelling to be attractive, like a house, which we assumed would be in everyone's best interests. We'd like to highlight that there were no complaints from the neighbors regarding the original proposal with the enclosed garage. More broadly, our argument for why we want to build this coach house is twofold. First, property values are exorbitant and there is a housing crisis across the country, particularly evident in Ontario. By having 2 homes on one property, we can keep our costs down and put our house in Kitchener on the market. Our property taxes in Maryhill will increase, which helps the township. Second, we saw during the pandemic how dire long-term care is in the province. By having these 2 homes on one property, we can take care of my parents for longer, ensuring that they don't need to go into long-term care unless absolutely necessary. The same argument applies to my brother as well. Group homes for the developmentally disabled are not widely available, and a slot only becomes available if the individual has nowhere else to go. In this case, Spencer can live in Maryhill with us, even long after my parents are gone. This puts their mind at ease, knowing Spencer will be taken care of and live close to us over the long term. Please also consider that the property in question is 1¼ acres large. To have a second residence on this property still leaves ample green space and visual relief. My understanding is that the township plans to revise the accessory building bylaw soon, and I encourage them to do so to provide more guidance and clarity for Woolwich residents looking to do similar projects. The building of accessory dwelling units is becoming more common and necessary as time goes on, and as the housing and long-term care crises in this province continue. I'm asking you to approve our application so that my parents may continue to live in their community comfortably and somewhat independently, and that they may grow old with dignity and prosperity. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Davis, for the presentation. Any questions from the members of the committee? Linda?
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the applicants. Is there a full basement proposed?
Yes, so originally we were going to try to do it on slab, but the builder had recommended doing a full basement as a crawl space also makes it hard for access to the utilities.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I'll wait because this is more a question for David than for the applicant, so I'll wait. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Charles.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Samantha. So condition B was talking about a carport. So you're suggesting that you don't have an interest in a carport, you guys would rather have a full garage?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so my second question to that is, do you have a size that the garage would be? Would it still not exceed the 40 square meters as proposed for the carport?
No, it was 40, wasn't it? That's exactly.
Yeah, it was the same size. It was just proposed to be not enclosed on the front.
Okay, so same size as the carport has been proposed, but a garage versus carport, so you have all the sides closed versus the two that they recommend.
Yes,
Awesome, thank you.
Stephen?
I guess then additionally, are you recommending as the applicant, the diagram that we would have gotten in our package several weeks ago with the garage attached?
that's what the plan shows. Yeah,
Okay.
the carport recommendation only came in late last week.
So there's no updated diagram.
No.
So what I'm looking at is what you're asking us to approve. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Doesn't look like it. Nancy, we had one comment that came in for this as well. Would you like
Correct.
to read it or?
Yep, I can read it to you. So a comment came in from an adjacent property owner this morning. It says, so it was from Tom Bruder. I'm emailing you about the new residence garden suite at 40 Isley Drive in Maryhill for Mr. and Mrs. Davis. I understand that there is discussion now about changing the garage to a carport at this location. I reside directly beside 40 Isley at 44 Isley Drive, and I've reviewed the plans for this building. The building as proposed for garage matches the existing house and new structure very nicely, and I know that the Davis family have designed this building properly to complement the property. From strictly an aesthetics point of view, from our vantage point and from the street, this design is preferred and will complement the other designs of houses in the area. A carport would not offer the same and also does not offer any security for them, nor does it keep vehicles from view. It also does not offer them any place to put garbage between pickups, forcing them to keep these items outside somewhere which would attract unwanted animals. I would like the garden suite at 40 Isley Drive to move forward with the initial garage design.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank
I believe everyone else here is for the second application, so I don't think there's anyone
Correct.
else. Okay. So I guess, and Linda, I know you had a question for David. Do you want to go ahead with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So David, this is very similar to one that we had not that long ago in Elmira, similar idea. And I believe it had a full garage, but the discussion that we had at the time, and I know I'm not, it's not precedent, but I'm looking at them very similar and same kind of purpose. The discussion we had at the time was the issue with the basement and having a full basement. And I think what we ended up with that one was doing a partial basement, enough to cover enough headroom to cover for access to the utility areas in the basement. I have to say, I don't have a concern per se with the garage. I think I tend to agree that the garage might just finish it off in looks versus a carport. But in trying to keep some consistency in my personal view as a committee member, I have a concern with the full basement. And I don't know, I can't remember from our discussion if the basement goes into the square footage or not, I guess is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, through the chair, Member Dixon, there is a bit of nuance with this application versus the previous one you referenced in Elmira. So in this case, there's no internal connection between what would be the ADU and what would be this basement below that you can't get directly from the livable occupied portion of the ADU directly down into the basement. The way that they've designed this is that the stairs to the basement are exterior to what we would consider to be the ADU. And for that reason, that basement could be a full height basement. It could be more of a crawl space, but it wouldn't count in any way towards that occupiable portion, the 95 square meters. That's a little different than the one I believe we dealt with in Elmira, where there was an internal direct connection. And for that reason, they made that finished floor to ceiling height in that case below what would be considered usable floor space.
Yeah, enough headroom to access the utilities. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure I think I understand the nuances, but it's still a basement, full basement. So, okay. Thank you for that.
Charles?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to David, I'm just curious, what was the decision process for the carport versus the garage? I get it's two more sides enclosed, but what's the idea behind that?
Through the chair, Member Zeidler, I guess the thought there was that by removing that garage door that would face towards the street, that it softens the physical massing and scale of this such that when you're looking from the street, it doesn't resemble a second main house on the property. Is that there'd be that differentiation that to soften that physical scale and aspect to the accessory unit, given that it's approximately 80%. It would be approximately 80% of the ground floor footprint of the main dwelling that's on the site. So it was an attempt to reach a compromise in this case to soften that physical impact with respect to the street.
Great, thank you, David.
Right, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, so this is again a question for David. David, the lot is a fairly large size. And if these two dwellings are in fact separate and distinct, which they will be, is there enough room that a severance could be applied for at some point in time in the future?
Through the chair, Member Fletcher, that's a very good question. Given that planning, upon issuance of a building permit, we would issue a certificate of occupancy with respect to zoning to identify that this second structure is in fact an accessory dwelling unit, and having that on file with the township would prohibit any future severance under the current policies. So unless our policies were to change, which I'm not suspecting they will, the fact that this permit was issued and certificate of occupancy issued, both identifying this as an ADU and nothing more than an ADU, that alone would stop any ability to sever that in future.
If I can just continue on with that though, but is there enough land that the actual, if somebody at some point in time in the future, and it could be 10 years from now, it could be 20 years from now, if housing crisis continues on, is there still a potential that someone could apply, and what would be that process at that point in time? Would they have to go through a zone change then, or what would happen?
Through the chair, Member Fletcher, it would violate our official plan policies and our current zoning. So I mean, they would have to apply for a couple of Planning Act applications,
Okay.
and they would have to also apply for a road permit. And so there's a number of things here that would stop that from happening. Highly unlikely that, with the existing policies in place, I can't foresee them changing fundamentally in the future in that aspect, that we would allow severance. Yes, there may be enough land base, perhaps there's enough frontage, but we've got multiple layers of policy that currently stand in the way of that. So.
Okay, good
Yeah.
enough. Thank you.
Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who to direct it to, but I'll direct it to David, and maybe the applicants can also fill in. I should have asked this earlier. This is private services? Well, and septic?
Through the chair, that's correct. There's private services in Maryhill in this area.
And there's no concern from a well and septic perspective to have that additional water usage capacity, both in getting water and getting rid of water.
Through the chair, Member Dixon, as part of the building permit application process, they would have to demonstrate that either A, the existing septic is able to accommodate the additional load, or if not, they would have to improve the existing septic, install a separate septic, and have issued a separate septic permit that goes along in parallel with the building permit. So there's really no concerns given the amount of available land base on the site. Nothing was flagged from the building department so far, and I'm not anticipating any concerns in that respect.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion from the committee? How would the committee like to handle this application? Linda, go ahead.
Okay, bear with me for a second, Mr. Chairman. I just want to get to the conditions and stuff because I'm going to change them. So I move that minor variance application A 2023, concerning the subject property known municipally as 40 Isley Drive in Maryhill, requesting relief from section 6.4.4 of the zoning bylaw to permit a total combined accessory building size of 147 square meters for a detached accessory dwelling unit of 95 square meters and attached garage of 40 square meters. Whereas a maximum of 100 square meters is permitted among all detached accessory dwellings in the R1 zone. And that be approved subject to condition A with respect to the grading and drainage plan. I would remove condition B with respect to the carport. Maintain condition C, that confirmation be received from the owners that the existing garden shed be removed. And confirm that D stays as well, that the detached accessory building of 147 square meters be constructed in general conformity with the site plan dated June 1st, 2023, as prepared by Van Harten Surveying. So in that respect, the motion is such that the original plans with the garage are maintained, and it's subject to the three conditions with the condition for the carport being removed.
Thanks, Linda. Seconder?
I'll second that.
See Charles. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor?
In favor.
So I see everyone's in favor of that. So that passes. The motion passes. And I would remind the applicants, so to be clear, that passes with the original garage design. I will remind the applicant that the last day of appeal expires on August 1st, 2023. Thank you for participating in the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Nancy, could you please read the second application?
Yes, the next application is for minor variance application A21 2023 for Safety Clean Canada Inc. for the property at 300 Woolwich Street South in Breslau. The property is zoned general industrial dry with site-specific provisions in sections 26.1.87 and 26.1.326 and contains an oil re-refinery. The applicant is requesting relief from site-specific section 26.1.326 to permit a hydrogen generator as an allowable use within an approximate total enclosure of approximately 508 square meters. The applicant received minor variance approval in February 2023 for a hydrogen generator as a permitted use on the property with an approximate area of 125 square meter enclosure. The proposed generator is accessory to the operation and is proposed to be placed on a concrete pad to the rear of the existing safety flare. And Andrew Head is here from Dryden Smith and Head representing Safety Clean to speak to the application.
Thanks, Nancy. Mr. Head, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andrew Head from Dryden Smith and Head Planning Consultants. I'm here on behalf of Safety Clean. Good afternoon to members of the committee and staff. Thank you for your summary, Nancy. Appreciate that. I'm sure that you recall just a couple of months ago, this application or a very similar application was before you to recognize the intended use of the hydrogen generator. Through detailed design, it became aware and discussions with staff that we needed to expand the area of operation to update the site plan. And, you know, other than we are in support of staff's recommendation to approve this minor variance, I don't really have much more to say. The details came through that we need to be able to swing certain materials and additional uses. Well, not really additional uses, but the area of operation just needed to be expanded from what was previously approved in February of this year. I'm happy to have any comments. If we do have Abton Nobahar from Safety Clean, if you have any detailed questions with regards to the use. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Head. Any questions for the applicant? Don't see any. Anyone else like to speak on this application?
There was no one registered, Jeremy.
Okay, perfect. Any other sort of questions for staff or the applicant from the committee? Seeing none, how would the committee like to handle this application? Charles.
I move a motion that minor variance application A21 2023 concerning the property municipally known as 300 Woolwich Street South in Breslau be approved, subject to staff recommendation, condition A.
Thanks, Charles. Any seconders?
I would second that.
Stephen seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor? That's everybody. So no one is opposed. The motion is passed. I want to remind the applicant that the last day of appeal expires on August 1st, 2023. Thank you for participating in the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video.
Thanks, everybody.
So I think that moves on to the minutes. Have the committee members had an opportunity to review the minutes as circulated for the previous meeting held on June 12th, 2023? And if so, are there any changes required? Doesn't sound like any issues. So I guess just a motion on the minutes.
I'll move the minutes of
Thanks,
the
Linda.
June meeting.
Thanks, Linda.
I'll
Seconder.
second them.
Chris, perfect. And all those in favor? That's everybody. Perfect. And as there, Nancy, there's nothing further to discuss. Oh, you're muted, Nancy.
Sorry about that. No, nothing further. David and I are working on the August package, which is 2 variances, 1 severance, and 1 billboard application. So we'll get those out. I'm targeting the 24th of July to get those out to you.
Thanks. Chris, do you have something before we adjourn? Or-
Yes, I would just like to thank planning staff and Nancy for sending out the elevation drawings that went with the assisted living house for Isley Drive. I think that was very beneficial for me to be able to see what the house was like in keeping with the neighborhood. Thank you.
No problem.
Agreed.
Thanks. As there's nothing further to discuss, I will declare this committee of adjustment meeting to be adjourned.
Job.
Perfect.
Done.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good night, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Night,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Night.